Another year, another iPhone. So this is the iPhone 16 Pro Max, the iPhone with the biggest screen real estate in Apple's lineup for 2024. And I've been spending a good amount of time with it and putting it through the paces as my daily driver. And lately, with each iteration, the iPhone has become less and less different from its predecessor. So what's worth talking about for this generation? Let's find out. So here's where I'm coming from. I've been using the regular iPhone 13 for a few years now, and it feels like I'm due an upgrade, especially in the camera department. Its battery life is getting a little short too, and I started looking for a suitable replacement. So naturally, I checked this year's iPhone lineup and got my mind set on the Pro series. On the other hand, I didn't want to upgrade, chiefly because of the fact that my old device still runs pretty great, and iPhones aren't cheap. I waited for a long time to watch the reviews of the iPhone 16 Pro lineup and really consider my options. In the end, I got the Pro Max because I want the maximum battery life available, as that will help with the overall longevity. First off is the design and the feel in the hand. It's quite heavy, especially if you're coming from a regular sized iPhone or an equivalent Android. I did get used to the weight eventually, but it is substantial. I got the natural titanium model because there have been a few reports going around about weird discoloration of the gold model this year. Anyways, the titanium rims do make it feel really premium, and the rounded edges add to the polished feel in the hand. If you're going for the Pro Max, forget about one-handed use, unless you got giant hands. I can barely swipe across half the screen. And this year they added yet another button on the side, the camera button, which is a button, though they won't admit it for some reason. And you can do some capacitive tricks with it, though I find it a little gimmicky, and the problem is it's hard to calibrate your touch to it so that it does what you want. And it's placed in a weird position which feels a bit too far from my index finger. Weirdly enough, other reviewers, those with notably larger hands than mine, have commented that it's awkward for them too. I personally feel like it should have been placed lower down. Apple's latest obsession with adding more buttons back on the device is kinda funny because you now have 3 different physical buttons to wake up your device. Jokes aside, it feels like their design philosophy is sort of becoming all over the place, and this could possibly stem from the need to add more features to their devices in order to differentiate from the previous generations. I've used it on my old regular-sized iPhone 13 interchangeably for a while, and more often than not, I much prefer the feel of the regular one in my hand. It fits much better. So unless you have a specific reason to go for the Max or Plus, you can stick with the regular size. It's especially true for the 16 generation because the Pro has all the camera capabilities that the Pro Max has. So this year, Apple's gone and shaved off the bezels even further and made it a little bigger at 6.9 inches for the Pro Max model. So while it gives very little advantage over the previous generations, one thing I do appreciate are the insanely thin bezels, which are a delight since it does help with immersion, though at the cost of accidental presses sometimes. The thing that surprised me is how little the much-touted Super Retina XDR OLED screen differs from my old iPhone 13's LCD. It only goes to show how far Apple's display tech has come. Yeah, you can probably tell it when it comes to side-by-side comparison, but really, I don't notice it at all in day-to-day use. The 120Hz refresh rate is also a bit of a luxury feature I can definitely live without. But sure, it's a nice feature to have. Apple claims that their new ceramic glass shield is more resistant to scratches and cracks compared to the last gen, but I haven't tested it out myself. Now, Apple's iPhones usually excel at performance, and with their latest A18 Pro chips, you get the best they have to offer, and at this point it's just good future-proofing, I guess. Everything runs smoothly and I can't seem to slow it down, unless you play demanding games in hot weather and it heats up so much that it begins to throttle. Speaking of heat, they've designed the chassis in a way that makes it dissipate heat better this generation compared to the last one, because at first it felt like it was heating up quicker when I pushed it, but it actually spreads the heat out better than the 15 Pros and dissipated more efficiently. So yeah, kudos for that. With a device like this, you'd expect best performance in gaming, and yeah, you get it. Now, battery life on the 16 Pro Max is great. I can't really complain, and it does last longer than the previous 15 Pro Max, at least according to the charts and most reviewers. I can definitely go 2 and even 3 days without charging, especially if I can stop playing Candy Crush so much. On the other hand, you can still drain it in 1 day with videography and heavy gaming. The bigger battery on this device is great if you plan on keeping it for a long time. If you need the longest battery life in a Pro, this is it, but the regular size Pro also has solid battery life. Charging speeds are faster too, at max fast charging around 30 watts wired and 25 watts for wireless with their new MagSafe chargers. I've generally been happy with how Apple tunes their speakers, and this one is no exception. It sounds solid for a phone and can easily match Android counterparts.
4070 with 32 gigs of RAM and a 1TB SSD. And the lower-end sibling, which cuts the RAM in half at a slightly lower
Still
frequency.
merely a phone, you know, and it gets a little distorted when you push it to the max. Well, here's a topic I have mixed feelings about. Waiting this long to make the review gave me plenty of time to test out and use Apple's Apple Intelligence features much better as they get rolled out, and I gotta say I'm not impressed. Siri still gets stuff wrong and gets confused often. The photo manipulation and Genmoji features are sort of useful, though they're not serious tools, at least in my opinion. And also, they're more useful on something like the iPad. They do provide convenience, and that's what they're aiming for, I guess. Generally don't use the AI writing and rewriting tools much. They're a bit stiff if you ask me, but could work in a pinch. My point is, this absolutely isn't something you'd run out to buy it for. The Pro's main 48 megapixel camera works great even in more demanding conditions, and I'm usually quite happy with the results, both in stills and videos. This is the sort of camera that you use effortlessly, and I appreciate the fact that they're now letting you take photos in RAW and videos in ProRes formats for those who want more editing room. I'm not that nerdy enough to really dive into it, but for casual use, there's a definite improvement compared to my old iPhone 13, but of course, that's a given, right? I found that using the main camera produces the best results in challenging light. The other lenses aren't really that reliable under such conditions. It also offers you photographic styles that you can tweak with. It's a mixed bag for me though. Your mileage may vary. I usually prefer the default one, or one that gives you the most natural look. Also, sometimes the macro feature automatically turns on when the phone thinks you're trying to take a close-up, and it gets a little annoying. The wide-angle lens is quite useful if you're trying to capture bigger scenes or group photos at a family gathering, for example. They have been steadily improving over the past generations, and oh, I did have a lot of fun trying macro shots with it. Sure, you won't be beating any DSLR's macro lens with it, but it's really handy when you're out and see something interesting along the way. The telephoto lens at 5x zoom is not my cup of tea. You can see it doesn't work so great and often results in grainy shots, so I stick to the main camera as much as I can. The thing that does bug me though is the lens flare and lens distortion, which can be noticeable around the periphery. Videography is where this device shines best. I've heard plenty of reviewers say how the iPhone can't be beat in this department, and I can agree with that. The image stabilization is also solid, and even without a gimbal or any additional equipment, you can get steady shots that don't look weird. And that's one of the main reasons I got this model, since I want to use it as my main camera when making reviews like these. Well, there's a whole lot of camera-related improvements that I can't dive into, but I encourage you to check out Film Alliance's in-depth comparison videos for that. It's really interesting. So, is the iPhone 16 Pro Max or the 16 Pro worth getting? If you have the 15 series, I would recommend waiting. Heck, even the 14 series. Waiting for the 17th generation is a good idea since there's been a lot of talk about significant design changes brewing in the rumor mill. I would have waited, but I also really like this design, and it's got a nostalgia factor for me since the metal rim reminds me of the OG iPhone 4. The cameras have improved even from the 15th generation. The battery life and performance is also better in meaningful ways, especially in heat management. Those are the things that are worth considering in my opinion. The AI, the new camera button, forget about them. You could even get the regular models this generation. In fact, I'd recommend them over the Pro lineup because they've caught up in so many ways. But what about the Android competition? Yeah, sure, if you're not stuck in the Apple ecosystem, they can be solid choices. But I think from a designer's point of view, the reason Apple users stick to it is because the ecosystem and all its devices provide a synergistic experience that few competitors can match. Maybe Samsung comes close, but it's not just about one device, you know. It's about how all of them work together to offer a seemingly seamless experience so as to help you get things done faster. But anyways, that's it from me. What do you think? Are you gonna wait? Or have you already gotten a 16th gen iPhone? Let me know. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe if this has been helpful or entertaining for you. Thanks for watching.